Beth Abramovitz, present.
Town of Oro Valley,
Jose Rodriguez, Town of Oro Valley.
ADOT Tucson District. Okay, moving on to Hona Odom,
Trisha Pavlik on Automation, Wando.
Pasquayaki,
Jason Bahi, Pasquayaki Tribe.
City of South Tucson, City of Tucson,
Robin Rains, City of Tucson.
Pima County,
Ana Olivares, Pima County.
ADOT Transportation Planning Division,
Mark Hoffman, ADOT Planning.
Tucson Airport Authority,
Good morning, Mike Smeckle.
Centran,
Steve Spade, present.
University of Arizona,
Mark Novak, University of Arizona.
Pima County DEQ, and Tohono O'odham San Javier District.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the in-kind reporting. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we go to that, I did want to recognize that we do have our federal partner, Romero Truly, is in the room with us. I think he may be listed as an ex officio member, so I'd like to welcome him. Make sure he has the opportunity to participate as we move forward. So moving on to in-kind reporting. Regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you're paid with federal dollars, please let us know now. So time spent in preparation for this meeting will be estimated by PAG staff who are knowledgeable of the agenda and meeting materials. At the conclusion of the meeting, the session report will automatically calculate your time spent in the meeting. Time spent working on PAG RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds. And that's all I have on this, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the December 15 minutes. If you've had a chance to review those, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
I think you can take your pick on who motioned and who second on that one between Jose and Beth.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is the legislative update. This is back to the committee. We haven't had this in a while, so I'm very appreciative that we're going to get this presentation from PAG staff. Thank you. David Zinda.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. It is a pleasure to speak to you today on this fun and exciting topic, at least for me anyway. Again, I'm David Zinda. I'm the policy analyst here at Pima Association of Governments. And without further ado, as you'll know, the second regular session of the 55th Arizona State Legislature began on January 10th, 2022. As of today, January 19th, 865 bills have been posted. The Senate and the House have until January 31st and February 7th, respectively, to submit new bills. Here at the Pima Association of Governments, we have various legislative policy positions which can be found on our legislative policy principles and positions brochure available on our website. These policy positions are set by the PAG Regional Council. And as of this year, there have been no changes to these positions from the prior year, and from what I recall, 2020 as well. Although our policy positions vary across subject matter, transportation-related legislation is still of chief interest to us, of course, as an NPO. So we track these legislative bills with a focus on transportation issues, really. As legislative session progresses, we'll be available to provide updates at future TPC meetings as needed. With that in mind, I'll point out just a few bills of interest regarding funding and some transportation technology. I'll be very brief though. Of those 800 bills, very few surprisingly pertain to transportation, or might I say unfortunately. So as for transportation funding, one promising one is HB 2263 by Representative Andrade, which would set up a transportation funding task force. This is from a bill from last year as well. I don't think got very far, but essentially it's going to establish a 19-member transportation funding task force to study transportation funding options for Arizona and submit a report to the governor and the legislature by December of next year. Additionally, although not currently in a bill, the governor has prioritized in his budget during his, I think it was the State of the State that he gave, $400 million to bring the total state dedicated commitment to Interstate I-10 expansion to $540 million, which will in part cover 20 miles of the 25-mile segment from Phoenix to Casa Grande and replace the Gila River Bridge. So where there are 2 lanes, hopefully now there will be 3, and to facilitate travel is between Phoenix and Tucson. Additionally, Senate Bill 1019 might alter how we collect vehicle license tax, or VLT. This is by Senator Genti-Rita. And that would peg VLT not to the MSRP of a vehicle, but rather the actual sales price. And this is essentially going to give car buyers something like a tax break if they can bargain for a lower price on their vehicle. Additionally, there are some other appropriations that we'll watch for Interstate I-10, but it would provide more lanes more on the west side of Phoenix, so we might not see quite the direct impact as under the governor's budget. In addition to these, a few bills are looking towards the future of both autonomous and electric vehicles. Representative Kavanaugh has introduced HB 2014, which prohibits a person from knowingly and intentionally installing or using a defeat device defined to interfere with or disable a safety feature in an autonomous vehicle. House Bill 2187 mandates ADOT to develop standards and procedures for the safe driving of autonomous vehicles. And Senator Steele from our region has introduced 3 bills surrounding electric vehicles, actually 4. Senate Bills 1150 through 1152 and 1154. And they all kind of tackle the same theme. They're going to boost electric vehicle infrastructure, encourage statewide electric vehicle planning, and set up a task force to collaborate with local governments, electric utilities, and environmental groups, and the transportation industry to identify the best ways to encourage an economy-wide transition from carbon-fueled vehicles to electric vehicles. So we are still early in the session, and we will be sure to watch these bills and others closely as they progress and be available to you for future meetings. With that, is there any other questions that I might be able to entertain?
Are there any questions for David? Robin.
Yes, good morning, David, Mr. Chair. Just one quick question. Do you have maybe a brief summary of the information you've given us so that we can also track those in our own government areas? That would be so helpful.
Yes, I can provide, perhaps with the help of Zonia or anyone else here at Pag staff, to distribute this notes that I've taken. I'll fill them out a little bit more and make that available if we can do that. I'd love to.
Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions for David? David, typically every year there seems to be a bill that drops that targets construction sales tax from point of construction to point of sale. Have we seen anything like that yet?
I have not seen that quite yet. Once again, we still are early on, and my latest kind of in-depth review was last Friday in preparation for this meeting, but I'll keep an eye out for that and be sure to make note of it in case I hear anything that changes.
Okay, it doesn't affect necessarily PAG directly, but it affects a lot of the jurisdictions. Thank you. Okay, if there's no other questions, then we'll move away from this item. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, item number 5 on the agenda is the Federal Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. David again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I guess I'll stick with you a little bit longer to provide an update on this law. Let's see, okay, looks like I've got control. Very good. All right. Okay, so the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, as you all will recall, became law last November. As our CFO of ADOT previously noted, this law has gone through a bit of an identity crisis in case you've heard different names. Names have spanned from BIF with an F to BIB with a B to BID with a D before being formally titled and enshrined into law as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IIJA. However, at least according to most public documents and departments and agencies, the IIJA is now BILL, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and that's the name you're going to pretty commonly see on any of these official documents now. As a reminder, there is a whopping $550 billion in new spending. That is not total spending, but new spending on top of old levels. Half of that spending, or about $274 billion, is new money specifically for the Department of Transportation and all of its programs, on top of what we were used to seeing under the FAST Act. Although much of the funding in the bipartisan infrastructure law is transportation related, you can see that billions of dollars will affect many aspects of our state outside of transportation, including improving our ports of entry, specifically I believe in Douglas and Yuma, facilitating the implementation of widespread broadband, PFAS remediation, just to name a few. But of course, as an MPO, we are always a bit more geared towards some of the transportation related elements of these kind of things. I realize that there is a lot of uncertainty surrounding this law, even though it's already been implemented. You know, it kind of reminds me of taking kids on a road trip. We may hear, are we there yet? But when it comes to the bipartisan infrastructure law, answer is still not quite yet. However, here are a few things we do know. We definitely have 5 years of apportionments providing our state over $5 billion with which we can plan and pretty much count on a lot of that money. But here's the catch with that. Apportionments are not the same thing as cash in hand. These federal apportionments, or dollar amounts authorized for programs by Congress, act analogously, to use ADOT's analogy, as checks, but they in themselves do not provide the cash wherewith to use those checks. The cash allotted for these apportionments comes from congressional appropriations bills, which is going to be used to set the federal budget for each fiscal year. So far, we have not had a federal fiscal year 2022 budget, despite that fiscal year having begun last October. Instead, a continuing resolution was passed by Congress in December, extending one from October, that froze federal spending levels at fiscal year 2021 amounts. This means, among other things, that we cannot receive the new increase in funding or take advantage of a lot of the new programming in the bipartisan infrastructure law. Effectively, it is as if we are still operating under the FAST Act, despite a new law superseding it. So here's the story for our state then. The bill, bipartisan infrastructure law, apportions some $970 million for federal highway programs in fiscal year 2022 for Arizona. So-called usable contract authority, which is the amount available after subtracting out the dollar amounts for the new programs, which can't begin with a couple of other things additionally, is going to amount to about $910 million. However, due to this continuing resolution and the fact that we don't have a 2022 budget, we have been afforded about 38% of the funding under FAST Act levels, which cover 38% of the year, federal fiscal year from October to February when the continuing resolution will expire. So that brings the total cash we actually have available to spend through February to $266.4 million, which is going to be a FAST Act level dollar amount. Multiply that by 3, you get an approximation of what you'd see under the year as if we were to continue under the FAST Act, which may or may not happen, which is just short of $800 million, down from that $910 million that we really wanted to receive. So we certainly hope to see a new budget which will provide the cash for all of these increased apportionments and guarantee the new programs slated to begin in this new legislation, or law rather. But we'll wait and see. So proceeding on to what we don't know, I guess I've covered a lot of it already. First, once we do have the budget all in order, we still don't know what the eventual obligation authority will be or how much of the apportioned funds we can actually spend. If you recall, of late, this has been set to somewhere around 95%, if my memory serves me correctly. We also, unfortunately, do not know how much of the funding, such as STBG, which we know and love, will be suballocated specifically to the PAG region. Not only do I not know, but also ADOT does not know from whom most of this information comes. There are also many new programs and grants in the bipartisan infrastructure law. However, we still have to await rules and guidance surrounding a lot of these new exciting programs and grant opportunities. ADOT has also noted that bridge and EV program funding are unknown, where that funding might come from and what the specific rules are attached to them. As I have noted, the current continuing resolution will expire in February, and at that time, we hope our congressional leaders will be able to pass a new budget. If they continue course and issue another continuing resolution after that time, the February 18th timeframe, it'll become harder to both eventually receive and fully use all that new funding provided by the bipartisan infrastructure law. Here, ADOT provided a nice chart showing funding levels from last year under the FAST Act compared to the bipartisan infrastructure law. Once again, I'll note that these values are apportionments, not cash in hand. The apportionments themselves increase across the board, as you can see. You'll notice some new kids on the block as well, as far as programs are concerned, including the carbon reduction and protect grants, which mitigate carbon emissions and promote climate resiliency, respectively. We currently await new information and let alone actual funding for these items. And as we learn more about them and coordinate with ADOT, we'll be sure to let you know. Who doesn't like a little surface transportation block grant funding? I certainly do, and I think we all do. And fortunately, we're going to retain about a steady 55% suballocation to COGS and MPOs here in Arizona and across the nation. So that means of all the STBG funding we receive in the state, 55% is headed towards organizations like PAG or MAG with our neighbors up north, where the state's going to keep the other portion plus some set asides. Just as a comparison, the FAST Act kept this at about 50% and increased it a little bit every year. So we still get the benefit of having a little bit more there. When we receive this type of funding, we also receive it in population buckets, and the funding is usually must be used for the population bucket for which it was assigned. Under the bipartisan infrastructure law, we added a new population bucket or band spanning communities with population of 50,000 to under 200,000. And despite these new population bands or buckets, we still aren't quite sure what the eventual funding amount will be for a region, not only in totality, but for those groups as well. Once again, I add for all these new items, we'll continue to work closely with the state to ensure that all new programs are successful and smooth. Okay, one last little bit of information before I kind of start to wrap it up. I certainly wish I had more to say about these exciting grant opportunities. There are some really cool ones out there just by reading the brief little descriptions they have provided in the bill text. But there's still so much we don't know in terms of the eligibility and guidance of a lot of these competitive grants. And attending various webinars on this precise matter, the advice I have seen has been to start identifying potential projects and preparing now, even if there's not spelled out guidance. Some of them are repeats from previous legislation, such as the RAISE grant, which is a rebranded, renamed version of the Tiger grant. So it's likely that these requirements will not change as much if they've already been with us before. Others, which I encourage you to kind of skim over and look, seem to be like almost tailored to a region, such as grants that fund strategies to mitigate urban heat islands. Once we learn more information about rules and requirements, we will definitely share them. The word on the street among a lot of the sources that I read from, Senator in Washington, D.C., and also ADOT, I believe, has said that we can expect to perhaps to begin to hear some more information on these grants in late February. Please do coordinate with us should you choose to pursue any of these grants or you're interested in them. All right, so as I've already discussed, the continuing resolution is going to expire on February 18th. And I guess we'll see what happens after that if we have a full budget, which brings our cash levels to our full apportion levels, or if we maintain them under the FAST Act. And I encourage you to check out the FHWA Bipartisan Infrastructure Law page. You can see the link down at the bottom there. And that's going to have the up-to-date information. And that's all I have, I think, for now. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. And I'll see you next time unless you have any questions that I can answer for you.
Are there any questions for David on this topic? Robin, yes.
Just briefly, I know there's a lot more detail in the policy framework, and I guess what I have is more of a comment than a question, just to remind you that the City of Tucson mayor has a fairly close relationship right now with the White House, and that the priorities that the city has with especially the equity and sustainability, local climate type policies fit very nicely into the framework of bill. So we're really aiming at some of those areas. I know that STBG has expanded. I know that we've got a lot of the other competitive grant programs that we feel like we're really set for, and happy to share any of that information as it comes through. Again, our priorities that our mayor and council have set up and the priorities that we've put together in, for instance, our Move Tucson plan are very closely aligned with what we see in the framework and what we've read. And so we've been putting together lists, and I hope all the rest of you are as well.
Thank you, Robin. Are there any other questions or comments on this topic? Okay. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, moving on, item number 6, transportation safety coordination. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a reminder, this is an agenda item that TPC asked to have brought back to engage in further discussion as a result of the transportation safety projections, the ADOT statewide projections that we presented to you last month. So what we'd like to do today is simply provide a little bit of information about what we know with forthcoming highway safety improvement program call for projects. And then we'd like to open it up to hear a little bit from member agencies in regards to what you're seeing and what kind of priorities you'd like to move forward with as we attempt to serve our coordination role. So I'll start with the HSIP, and then I'll get into an exchange from the members and create a little roundtable discussion for you. And I should mention that we have invited the ADOT transportation safety engineer, Carrie Wilcoxon, is in the room with us today. If there are any HSIP questions that come up, Carrie is really the expert in the state in terms of the administration of that program and how that's going to be rolled out. What we do know is that we have supported our member agencies successfully in bringing nearly, I think, 11 million plus of HSIP funding to the region in the past round. And that was done through support activities that we helped the jurisdictions with, as well as providing some analysis tools for them to better understand what their safety challenges are and how those might align with the HSIP criteria. So what we've heard from ADOT is that we're expecting a new call for projects to come out in the February-March timeframe. That may have shifted, but we're anticipated somewhere in the range of $40 million per year for fiscal years 25 and 26 to be released. We've heard that's going to be approximately a 6-month window to complete applications. And there is a minimum $250,000 per project that is targeted for HSIP applications. ADOT will again be using the BC benefit cost ratio and using the injury severity 4 and 5 crashes. So those are fatalities and serious injury crashes. That will be used as the primary prioritization metric, similar to what was done last time through. We're not anticipating any major changes to the current ADOT Highway Safety Improvement Program manual, which was updated in 2018. Within that manual, you'll find a list of crash modification factors, and I believe there may even be links to the National Crash Modification Factor Clearinghouse, guiding applicants on what crash modification factors are deemed acceptable by the state, in that they have a higher credibility score or ranking for their use and applicability on safety projects. As we did last time, our intent is to, again, provide assistance to the member agencies with the HSIP applications. We've done that in the past by initiating an on-call group of consultants, along with our safety experts, Gabe Thumb and others in-house, to help member jurisdictions get from understanding that there may be an issue to what's the issue, to what should I do about it? How do I correct these crash trends that I'm seeing at this site location or systemically? And what might a competitive HSIP project application look like? Then let's put that application together. So we're hoping to support member agencies all the way through that process. And we will be sharing information as soon as it becomes available in relation to the forthcoming call for projects. That's all I've got on the HSIP side. So I'll take an opportunity to maybe pause there, see if Carrie or anyone from ADOT safety section or even federal highways would like to say anything, and then maybe we'll do questions on the HSIP side before we dive into the general safety issues and providing a listening session for our member jurisdictions. Any comments from ADOT or Federal Highway? Any questions? All right, easy enough. All right, so we know that we heard last time that member jurisdictions are digesting the safety performance and the safety projections that we served up for your consideration as they move forward through our committee process. We've done that to show both the calendar 2022 safety projections that ADOT puts together for the entire state in relation to what our aspirational safety goals, objectives, or targets are within our long-range plan RMAP. And that kind of gives a sense of, are we on pace to achieve the target we set within the long-range plan. So that's a way for us to better understand how we're performing from a safety perspective. And what we heard from you is we'd like to have more discussion on that. And we'd like to keep our eye on that ball to see if we can get those trends all headed in the right direction. So that's what we're trying to initiate here today, that coordination and that discussion. I will remind you that PAG does not own or operate any transportation facilities, and each jurisdiction is responsible to monitor and implement safety measure, including enforcement, to collectively achieve the desired safety objectives. So we do not get involved in anything that is the responsibility of the jurisdictions, particularly because of the liability concerns and laws that protect jurisdictions, but are not offered to private entities such as PAG. We don't design, construct, or operate any facilities for that particular reason. So what we'd like to do today is to provide a listening session for all of you so we can hear your thoughts on the safety challenges that you're faced with and how we may be able to assist in our roles and responsibilities related to coordination of safety. So I'll hand it over to you, Mr. Chair. We can do a round robin, or we could start with Robin. We could, whatever your pleasure is.
Well, as much as possible, let's try to use the hand raising function so that people don't end up talking all over each other, trying to see who's going to go first. And no surprise, Robin's got her hand up already. She's been on that button all day. So we will go with Robin first. Thank you.
Well, sorry. I really don't have very much in the way of questions or even much additional information. It was just, Mr. Chair, a little disconcerting, even though we all know that we've been having safety issues in our streets just now, to see that data in our last TPC meeting and that we're not really meeting our aspirational goals. I know that the pandemic has changed many things in our streets, and I don't know if the rest of the jurisdictions are having issues with speeding in excess of what we had pre-pandemic, but we are certainly at least experiencing that word of mouth that there is more speeding both in neighborhoods and in major streets. Don't know exactly, obviously, why. So it would be hard to say what the actual fixes would be. We're exploring things in the city of Tucson, like speed tables and traffic circles, but those are sort of typical applications that we've used in the past. And I really wonder if any of the other jurisdictions or even PAG has more innovative forward-thinking ideas as to how to mitigate this, because obviously police and speeding is not the full answer. We don't have enough police in the street to keep that speeding and the accidents that happen after speeding from happening. I'd love to hear from ADOT or FHWA if there's any forward-thinking ideas, especially on major streets, as to things that we can explore that we haven't yet explored.
Anna also has her hand up.
Hi, thank you, Keith. Just kind of to follow up on what Robin said, as this HTIP money is going to become available, you know, we saw the information last time and we saw the trends are not going the direction we want. But I would like to get us organized so that we do use that funding that comes available to help those trends. So if speeding is available, is there a way we can find some information of where it is or the kind of crashes that are happening, that we can all agree to use that money, that HTIP money that comes, to actually make a change in those trends? We've all used HTIP funding in the past, and I know that we've used portions of it, but it really has not changed our safety rating. So I'm kind of looking to see if there's a way that we can target the use of that safety funding that's going to come to us to really make a difference on those trends. And I don't know how we get that information. I guess that's my question to Paul. If there's a way we can get that information that can help us target the use of that safety funding to really make a change in our trends.
Sure, I'm happy to speak to that, Mr. Chair, Anna. As you know, we have, so back in 2016, we put together the region's first comprehensive strategic transportation safety plan for the PAG region. And so we looked across all E's at that point because we knew that engineering would not solve all of the safety challenges facing the region. So as part of that discovery, one of the things that we heard loud and clear from our jurisdictions is that there were challenges across the board with understanding all the way through the safety issue. From, I know that there's an issue there, I know that there is a safety challenge, but I don't really know how to get to understanding what that safety challenge is, how it relates to the overall picture within the region, where I should prioritize, and how should I attack this thing. And so we then went deep into development of what is now the Pag Safety Explorer tool, which is a safety data analysis tool that we provide for our jurisdictions. We have used that in helping the jurisdictions identify what their safety challenges are and to identify what project opportunities they have related to HSIP or other fund types. We've also used it to examine what our safety performance trends look like in the region. So back in March of 2020, I provided a fairly robust overview to the RTA Citizens Advisory Committee that went through kind of a breakdown of what's the percentage of nighttime crashes, what kind of run off the road crashes are we seeing, how does it relate to the overall picture of crashes in the region, how pervasive are our intersection crashes, what kind of first events are we seeing, Are we seeing a lot of rear ends? Are we seeing side swipes? So I went through kind of an overview of that. That was pulled together with, at this point, what is now older data, but still gives us a sense of what challenges should we go after so that we're not just chasing our tail on trying to solve safety. We want to approach it and allow you all to approach it in a very strategic, thoughtful way so that we can indeed begin to drive those numbers down. So we have the tool that we can glean that information from. And, you know, at your direction, we can pull together some sort of update to that March 2020 report that gives a sense of what's the safety profile within the region as a starting place for you all to understand. I never really knew that there was so many nighttime crashes, for example. We really need to turn attention to lighting and getting speeds down during those night conditions. That's just an example. It's not really an accurate one at this point, but I'm just trying to give you a sense that there will likely be some discoveries by understanding the safety profile and the performance characteristics of what kinds of crashes we're seeing and what are the characteristics of those crashes. Because I think we need to go beyond just what is our total number of fatalities or fatality rate. That gives us a sense that there's smoke there, but we need to understand where's the fire, the real issue, and how do we drive that down? Because we're not quite there yet. We need to kind of get deeper into understanding what the characteristics of the crash types are, where they're at, and then get all the way through to understand what we can do about that to help drive those down. It will not just be an engineering solution. It will not just be an enforcement solution. It's going to be kind of an all hands on deck type of myriad of activities, education included, to help drive those numbers down. So we stand ready to help bring information about what we know about safety performance and crash characteristics throughout the region at TPC's request, and then we can take the conversation forward from there. I offer that up as a thought and an idea for your consideration, Mr. Chair and committee.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Paul. I think that would be good information to have before we start even the call for the projects. So I think that as a region, we can kind of establish the criteria that we want to receive for these call for projects. You know, if any project that's being proposed is really not going to help with the trend, we should really not consider it, for one thing. And the other thing that we've noticed, we've made improvements, but they didn't really help lower our safety trends, and sometimes maybe increase it in other areas. I don't know if we have the capability to, the projects that are proposed, if we could, I don't know, there's a way to simulate that, what they will do in the region. If you almost wish I had a crystal ball that I could see how well it was going to improve it or not. Because it's, again, we end up chasing our tail, as you said, if we spend money somewhere and it didn't really make a difference in our overall network, in our safety, and our safety patterns. So I think all that information would be good.
We're still working on the crystal ball button within Pag Safety Explorer. We don't quite have that one perfected. And there's so many complications in what happens with safety, human factors, really, yes, all the entire thing. And sometimes the course correction of safety trends doesn't really immediately appear. So we need to look multiple years.
Yes.
We have a clearer sense that the improvements that are being put in place will drive down the pervasive crash types that you're all seeing throughout the network. I think that is a very healthy place to start, to know that we're seeing a lot of these kind of crashes. And if we do these things, it's proven that the implementation of these crash modification factors or activities will begin to drive those numbers down. It's not going to happen overnight, but if we know that that's the right investment, that's where we want you all to be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any other questions or comments on this topic for Paul? Or anyone else have anything to add?
Just one last thing, Mr. Chair. I have been asked to remind you that we do convene your staff, your safety experts and traffic engineers and the like as our transportation systems and safety subcommittee. It's a T and a lot of S's, but it's a great group, and we've had great safety discussions with that group. It is our intent to engage them in this conversation again. So I kind of just offer that to you. And if you have any thoughts or guidance on how you'd like us to pursue that, whether that is an exchange between these two groups or just allow those staff to report back to you about the conversations that we have with them. They really have been at the heart of our improvements to the Safety Explorer tool and the development of safety HSIP applications and the like. So we'll be engaging them again on the issue of safety, particularly as the HSIP call gets closer and we prepare efforts for that.
I appreciate that. I mean, those staff are the people that are most closely aligned with both the operations and a lot of the improvements that get made within our jurisdictions and can control things like signal timings and signage and some of the other physical things that can be done. So they are the appropriate staff who are most closely aligned with that work.
But just so I'm clear, I just want to make sure that we have clear direction on what you, Mr. Chair, and TPC are expecting us to bring back to this committee, what the timing of that looks like so that we have our marching orders clear and we can provide the information you need in the venue and the format in which it's most productive for you, whether that's directly back to TPC or us starting that conversation with the Transportation Systems and Safety Subcommittee. We're kind of at your behest here in terms of how you'd like us to bring back some sort of report or some sort of overview on safety performance and crash characteristics in the region that we just discussed.
I'll start, and I welcome any other input from the rest of the committee. I think that the subcommittee is the place to start with this and give any recommendations moving forward. And then from there, I would like to see a presentation back with the data and the recommendations from the subcommittee, which is made up of our staffs that deal with this issue most closely. And if anybody else has any other opinions on that, I'd be welcome to entertain that. Yes, Robin.
Sorry, I've been talking quite a bit today. Mr. Chair, Paul, I totally agree that we should start with that subcommittee. They do have a lot of knowledge, and they certainly are everything that we understand about the engineering portion of this question. I'm also interested, of course, in discussing the encouragement and education portion, because like Anna alluded to, we have HSIP and they're like spot improvements and we don't know how it pushes out. So I'd be interested in what the systemic look is, which I think is what you've described, but also how can we measure things that are not just the engineering fixes? Because I think sometimes we overlook education and encouragement, which are less expensive, but if we can get past some of those human factors, maybe we have more far-reaching improvements. Obviously, some of that is tinged with hope, but just an idea. I don't know how you measure the enforcement or excuse me, the education and encouragement pieces of this.
Well, Mr. Chair, Robin, certainly measuring the impacts of those, I guess, softer side improvements is quite a trick. It's not an easy thing to do. I should also, they do have a place. Let's just make sure we're clear about that. I by no means think that engineering is the only way we're going to fix this or send the trends in the right direction. So it has to be part of the solution set for sure. I will say, I know that there's traditionally limitations on those types of initiatives when it comes to the use of HSIP dollars in particular. So searching fund source opportunities is going to, we can deal with that later, and that's fine, but just recognize that that's a challenge. There may not be a readily available pot of funding where we can just point you to and say, go there and get the funding. But we can help you look, and if we have a list of education enforcement types of activities that make sense to you, that are proven to help drive numbers in the right direction, we can help identify what that looks like with your help and prepare you to pursue those improvements within your own jurisdiction or collaboratively across jurisdictions. So we stand ready to do that. And we know it's going to be a mix of different types of initiatives in order to really make impacts that we need to make.
So just wanted to throw out there real quick that I think I saw Safe Routes to School as a program in the new bill, which reinstituting that may be a help.
Jose? You're still muted, Jose.
Sorry about that. Yeah, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think that'll be good information if the PAC can share with us where the hotspots are as far as crashes go. I think that's a good place to start. There's as far as we can tell, obviously our jurisdiction is relatively small. So when there's a fatality, we know right away what the issues were because we work very closely with PD. But as far as education goes, I think we're already doing that. You see it all the time on TV about texting and driving. So I think that's covered as far as education goes. But if they can give us that information where the hotspots are before for the color projects, that'll be very helpful for us.
We absolutely stand ready and prepared to do that. That was really the heart of our success in helping our member agencies get to the HSIP dollars last round and pulling in $11 million worth of projects to the Pag region. So I think that's a great place to start, and we're ready to help those efforts once again. I should say that we continue to see challenges with making sure that while we know that fatalities are high-profile events, we also know that chasing fatalities around is not really a terribly effective way to drive the larger trends in the right direction. Certainly, fatalities need to be dealt with, but there's oftentimes many factors involved in fatality that could be any sort of user behavior, seatbelt, no seatbelt, driving under the influence types of events and things like that. So many of those we cannot engineer our way out of. So there needs to be that safety education component considered at least. And we need to make sure that we keep that conversation with police and enforcement groups so that they understand what our capabilities are. They understand that they should be checking with all of you to understand the transportation focus and perspective on safety improvement and coordinate activities as much as possible.
Paul, is that report available now, or is that forthcoming?
It is available. If you need access, we make it available for our member jurisdictions. And it is password protected. So what I would recommend is that you contact me, and I'll put you in contact with our site administrator, Josh Pope, and others who can set you up. We also have a user guide and tutorial. We can also provide an overview of how to use the tool. We have some great power users from the jurisdictions in there that have put a lot of hours into utilizing the tool and doing a wide variety of analyses. And as we found, it was a hugely effective way for us to approach the HSIP application process, understand what the safety issues are, and then how to craft a project to address those safety challenges.
One last question. When is the call for projects for the HSIP?
At this point, what we're looking at is February, March timeframe. So more information will be forthcoming from ADOT as they kind of iron out the wrinkles there and get a sense of when they'll be rolling out that call for projects. Again, this is fiscal 25 and fiscal 26 funding. So it's not immediate safety improvements. It's things that you have to think about improving a few years down the road.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think you're muted, Mr. Chair.
You're right. Is there any other questions or comments? I muted because I thought I was getting some feedback on you, Paul. Okay, thank you very much. Next item number 7 is vehicle miles traveled trends for the pandemic. Yansu, no?
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Crystal. Let me check if this works. Okay. Let me check the if it moves. Okay, that's great. Okay. I'm not sure, just maybe I just test one more thing. Oh, it's working. Okay. Okay. Good morning, all just TPC members and Mr. Chair, and thank you for this opportunity. And my name is Hansu No, and the Mountain Manager at Pag. And today I'm going to talk about the VMT trend and how travel behavior changed in Pima County during this pandemic period, and using multiple sources of data, including Google's mobility report, the Still Light data VMT reports, and Pag's TRP travel reduction program survey data analysis. And pandemic, just the timeline. And so since the first COVID cases reported back in January 2020, there have been significant shifts in our life, and not only wearing a mask and getting vaccination, but also our daily travel behavior changes. And according to our level of concerns, based on the reported cases, new variants, and relevant regulation. And especially just in March, just back in 2020. And our concern was escalated rapidly, and then as we have more just COVID cases, and the Arizona governor finally ordered stay at home and the public school closed. Considering multiple just economic impacts in May 2020, and the governor ended the stay at home order, and then just we spent a strange summer where the COVID and as well as just waiting for the vaccines. And then then finally, and the vaccines and arrived in December 2020. And then just the springtime, mostly just the vaccination has been expanded to younger age groups, and including just the booster shots. And since August 2021, and most of the schools opened 100% in-person classes. And September, getting the booster shot available, expanding there just the vaccinations. And in December 2021, first the Omicron variant reported in the United States, and just also expanding the booster shots for available in the 20 plus, just especially for students. And here you see that just the first COVID-19 vaccination, and started in December 2020. And then you see that just the increase in the mean is just around the time, the spring season of 2021. And then just now we have roughly around 72% and vaccinated at least the one shot. And on the other side, in the COVID-19 cases, you see just the major 3 waves. And now just the first wave during the summer 2020. And winter time, November 2020 through just January 2021. And the second wave, then now we have just the third strong wave, and it related to just the Omicron variant. But we were just mainly just focusing on just this period because of the time since this 2022 started, and we haven't just had just enough data set yet. So here's the first the Google mobility report, and you see that all just the bar charts up and down, and the Google's and as you know, just the collects just your information and through your cell phone, and they now just have been just providing this the Google mobility report, especially for this COVID-19 and the concerns. And according to their baseline, just January, February 2020. And they actually reporting just this percent changes. And or just the 6 sectors, and they split those activities in the retail in just this is the dark blue in the parks, and the gray in the workplace percent change, and the light blue in the grocery and the farmers percent change, and the orange color train station, the percent change, and shows that yellow color, and the residential percent change in gray. Green color. So as just the public school closed and stay-at-home order just started, and you see that just significant just changes in just the April just period. You see that, and on top in the green line shows around the 15% increase, and comparing to our just the baseline in January, February 2020, and especially for the residential in their area. Then just the grocery and pharmacy dropped around the 15%. And then the parks around 25%. The others and the retail, workplaces, and the train stations dropped around just 40%. And then just the stay-at-home order ended, and just it's gradually just changed and increased sharply, and the grocery, and dropped a little bit just the residential and the activity changes. And after just having just the summertime, and also just the way the concern, the COVID-19, as well as just the waiting and the vaccination. After, but the 2021 and the winter time, 2020 through 2021 winter time, we see just we talked about the COVID cases spiked, and so this peak period, and there are certain changes, and as well as just the increasing residential and activities, then just to drop the grocery and the farmers percent changes, and then the retail also just dropped. Then as just the having more just the vaccination, the percentage, then just the gradually just changed, especially just residential gradually dropped, and now just at the end of 2021, and around the 7% and higher than the baseline 2020, the January, February, and this grocery and the retail. Comparing to the first and the case in like a 40% drop, and then it's increased way better, but that's still struggling around the 2.3%, 6% less than the baseline. Then here's this train station, and still a little bit just struggling, then around just 21% less than the baseline, and 27% less than in the baseline for those workplaces. And the park might be just related to just hours of the vaccination. And as just having more vaccination, might be there are some just trips actually just reported out of town, and including me. And so might be the reason. So, but this is a kind of a sudden drop, and we need to just investigate a little bit more about this pattern. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, that is just the first Omicron variant reported here. And here is a still light data VMT trend analysis, and the same, and just similar, just the pattern you see. And the first, like I just say here, blue line, and that shows that daily count VMT, and orange color shows that, and 7-day average. And then and here's a green dashed line shows the monthly average, and as I use it for the Google mobility report. So the sudden drops happened in the mid and March, and then just the big drop happened especially in just April. And comparing to just the February and the 25 million in the VMTs to just the April, around the 16 million, which is around just the 40% dropped. After, and then just the stay-at-home order ended, then you see that a little bit just increased in the VMTs, and having just the peak period during winter time last year. and so see and some drops and still just around like a 20 million just the VMTs, but which is around 17 and 18 and million just the VMT dropped. And after just getting the vaccination and increased a little bit, but this summertime, as it has just having more just a vaccination, there are many trips to just out of town as well as just a summertime, and with actually just the dropped and including just the seasonal and residents. So here is the third analysis, and we conducted using just Pag TRP, a travel reduction program, the employee survey, and so comparing just the mini in the 2019 and the 2020. So in the first year, just the sample size and the collected just the surveys actually just dropped in 2020, and in 2019 we have around 50,000 just the surveys in the samples. And in the 2020, 43,000 surveys conducted. On the other hand, and the employers that participated has been just increased, especially in 2020, and around like the 14 and more just the employers they participated in the survey. So geographically, and so 8 employers and that were out of the survey in 2020, and new employers participated, which shows the geographical difference in the 2019. You see just the minutes downtown and the TMC areas highlighted. On the other hand, the 2020 and the more just the participants, you see that's the south portion, including Raytheon. And so it's sure in the COVID-19, the fact that the survey, the sample size, especially university, and they closed in during the COVID-19. So we actually missed a significant portion. We are focusing on just the more orange, just the work pattern, especially just work from home, how much just to change it. And as you see here is in 2019, which is around just the 1800, and including the 1 day at least 1 day at home and 5 days at home full time. And then just to see here 2020, the significant increase, you see that in around the 8,500 and the surveys and conducted. So the total percentage, and which was out of just the total surveys, it was a 4%, including just a 1 day, at least 1 day, and the work from home, the surveys, and the 4% now just the 19% in just 2020. So which is an increase sharply. And here is the we split the survey result and based on just sectors and by next code. And you see the first in the information sector, including just the IBM and the Intuit, is showing that around just 55%, very high, and followed by the utilities and the manufacturing. And but this sector is not typically related, just related to the work from home, but most of it just the surveys we conducted is actually office jobs. So which shows that around like it's little less than 40% for the utilities, including the TEP, and the manufacturing shows that still around 38%, and including Raytheon. So then just the other professional, scientific, technical service job and the management companies, so which was actually makes sense. And then just the lowest in is a portion in the retail and the other retail, real estate, rental and listing, just a portions, no information about their work from home. Then just that we also analyzed in the travel impact, and with the travel time was estimated using just a HERE API. HERE provides just a point-to-point and the specific date and time, just the travel time information. And then we applied that just the exact the time in the survey conducted, and using just a HERE API. 2019 and the home to work, you see that, and the distance, travel time, and speed. And the 2020 is just a home to work, and the distance is not much just different, and around 0.2 miles, actually lower. But as I showed earlier, and the geographically just the changes, so which might be another kind of factor, the difference. But this is not significant at all. And the travel time, the 21 minutes, are exactly the same, and compared to the 2019-2020. And the speed was a little different, but this is showing that just not much significant changes. And walk to home shows that the similar pattern, and the distance is kind of similar, and the travel times and changes are not so much different. And the speed shows that almost the same. So here's the summary, and trip activities in the VMT were affected temporarily by COVID-19 pandemic and relevant state and local orders and guidelines. So activity locations, that there's just a Google mobility report, and still affected by that COVID-19, but varies by the activity group. And the VMT using just a street light data, and dropped in more than 40% in March 2020, then just recovered, but still we are facing and around 20% less than, and then the baseline just January, February 2020. Work from home and the rates using our just the TRP employer surveys, and increased 4% participation in 2019, now in 2020, and they showed in the 19%. And travel time, commute time, and analysis shows that not much just impact, and those impact is really just marginal for those the survey analysis. And I'm happy to just answer, and if you have any questions, and thank you.
Are there any questions for Yanshu? Okay, it's very interesting. So I was confused at first. So when you say traffic light, you meant traffic signal data, from the traffic signals?
Oh, the street light data?
Street light data.
Yeah, street light data is a company, and providing just the data and analysis, and as well as just the data, and the Pima County and Pag actually use the data set, and they uses and the third party and the GPS data to process and provide the travel information.
Oh, so it's not data coming from traffic signals or any equipment. They're using data from GPS?
Yes.
From people's phones?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Are there any other questions for Yansu? Okay, thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is item number 8, also Hyunsu, Census Bureau count, resolution CQR program.
Yeah, thank you again, and then for this opportunity. And I'm going to just talk about the Census 2020 count question resolution and the process. So what is the CQR, and which is official the review process provided by the Census Bureau in reviewing the 2020 census count, housing unit, population, if there's any geographical error or just processing errors, and which will just improve post the 2020 census population estimates, not the actual just 2020 census product. And which will not just collect any just new data like just a special census, and which just improves in the post 2020 census, which means that those products and after the 2020 census, including like a ACS in the survey and the product, so those will be just improved, but not by itself in the census 2020 census product. And with this review process will not address census disclosure burdens system, the AS method, and especially for those privacy issues, which should be just submitted by the highest elected and appointed officials, tribal area, state, counties, consolidated cities, incorporated places, or minor civil division. which was notified in December 2021 for 2020 CQR submission process. Most of the CQR cases, and including misplaced or duplicate excluded counts in enumeration, or just the inaccurate or missing boundaries. So you can find those information through the link on the bottom. And how to participate in so the Census Bureau encouraged to submit using their secure web incoming module, SWIM, with one of the following digital methods in block maps or just the GUPS in the software the census provides, and or just a GIS software, including just ArcGIS. The participants' materials including 2020 CQR participant guides, census address count listing files viewer, and the CQR block count list and the address list template files, and census block maps and the partnership sheet files, and as well as just the golf software. And you can find that the information and including materials through that, and the hyperlink in the bottom. So here's the timeline, and also just including the post-census group quarters review, PCGQR, which is the new program and to correct the issues in the group quarters. And the census received many questions about expanding their programs, which is the first program they are trying to just get, and specifically for just the group quarters. And including just these two in the CQR and the PCGQR, and the January 3rd, and it started and accepting the CQR cases and the processing from eligible tribal, state, and local governments. And the deadline is important in June 30, 2023, and around just the 18 months of period, and we can submit. And that's the deadline for CQR, the cases. PCGQR is because of a new program, which is not in the clearly just stated yet, but the spring and the 2022 through just the summer time in the 2023 will be the kind of a deadline. And thus the explicit and the time and the date will be provided in the sometime, the time in this spring. Then after just receiving the CQR cases, the census will provide their feedback, and the deadline for Census Bureau to provide the results impacted governmental units is September 30, 2023. So how PAG is going to support, and we already discussed the Census CQR and the process and this information with our jurisdictional partners back in December 2021 through this PopTech meeting, and analyzing the census. We have been analyzing the census 2020 data, and also using our PAG's internal data sets. And then just we are going to just review together with our jurisdictional partners, and we scheduled especially with the City of Tucson next week. And also just we are going to just update any outcomes and the analysis through just the PopTech subcommittee meeting. So you can find all the resources through these links. And then if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer the questions.
Are there any questions for Yansu on this topic? Yes, Jose. You're muted, Jerry.
Can we get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Any further questions on this item? Okay. Thank you, Hyunsu.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, next item 9, future agenda items. If there's any items that the committee members would like to suggest for a future topic for discussion. Yes, Catherine.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. This is Catherine with FEMA County. I noticed there wasn't a HERF report on this agenda. I think that'd be a good standing item that used to be on the TPC reports to continue to monitor how those revenues are coming in this year. And then last month, I requested revisiting the 2014 action that goes to the supplementation of regional funds to RTA funds, because we are seeing a lot of changes in the regional revenue, just to revisit where are we in terms of funding the program and how are we moving forward. I acknowledge that other committees are taking on that action, but I think this is an important one since we're the closest to the tip. Thank you.
Thank you. I would echo on top of Catherine, in addition to the HERF report, we used to also see usually an RTA revenue report as well. Carrie.
Hi, everybody. This is Kerry Wilcoxon from ADOT. Sorry I'm late. I had a conflict that came up at the last moment. I understand Mona was able to cover for my topics, but I did want to mention that, and you guys probably all know, but I did want to mention that ADOT's pedestrian and bicycle coordinator has left ADOT. And so in the next couple of months, hopefully we'll have a replacement for that person. It'd be nice to have that person appear at this meeting, or at least introduce themselves at the meeting, as well as talk about the upcoming plans for redoing or updating the pedestrian, bike, and bicycle safety action plans for the state. Might be a good opportunity for discussion in general.
Okay, thank you. I would say coordinate that with PAG staff when you're ready to bring that type of presentation forward.
Will do.
Okay. Robin, did you have a hand up earlier and take it down, or are you?
I just wanted to add on to what you and Catherine said, Keith, about the updates to the revenue, and want to make sure that we're clear that we want to see all of the different revenue streams all together so that we have a full understanding. That's very helpful. And I also would love to hear what ADOT's doing when they're redoing their bike ped plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, traditionally, the HERF and the RTA were the two revenues. The other that vary month to month that we normally see. Robin, I think the other ones are normally brought about during tip formation.
Well, I just would like to see it all kind of in the same system. It would just be helpful to see the snapshots, even if the one set isn't changing very much, so that we can see the entire picture all at once. It's just helpful to see that.
Okay. Catherine?
And if I can just add to that, especially given the changes that we anticipate with SDBG funding from the federal infrastructure bill, I think, seeing the big picture and knowing how that changes. 2.6 is one that, sometimes we just see the 12.6 report, but 2.6 has changed, and ADOT, of course, is partners in delivering a lot of the RTA program. So again, I echo the full funding picture, I think would be helpful as we look to the next 5 years.
Okay. Okay. If there's no other comments or future agenda items, then we will move on to adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you all very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.